Hey everyone, welcome to PyHacks. Today we're going to be looking at conditional logic and we're going to be looking at the if, else and else if statements. Okay, so I'll take you through and we'll launch straight into this. So I'm going to open my Spider code editor. Just a little thing around operators, just two things we're going to explore here. So equality needs to be passed, so if you're evaluating two statements, the left and the right side of the argument, you need to have an equality, so not equals. So double equality there to perform that evaluation. For not equals, it's this and not equal to. So exclamation mark and equals symbol. We're going to explore the other operators as we go along doing the coding examples. So I'm going to use an example of me going for a job, and I've got 6 years coding experience, and the role needs 5. Yep. So I'm going to evaluate this in an if statement. If my code experience is greater than the role code experience, and remember indentation is key in Python. So if anything's going wrong with the code, it's probably because you've not indented right. So I'll check that first. If anything other than that, you've misspelled something wrong, or remember Python's case sensitive as well. Great, you've got the job. So we know that that's going to return true because there's 6 and a value of 5. 6 is greater than 5, therefore that becomes true under Boolean algebra. Or Boolean logic, should I say. So it's going to say, great, you've got the job. Okay, so that's a simple if statement, simplest statement. So let's have multiple conditions that we're checking for. So we're going to use the Elif function here. So I'm going to say if my role code experience is greater than my coding experience. So we know that this is not true because the role experience only wants 5. That's not greater than 6, so this is going to return false. And here we're going to say, we're going to create a variable called code deficit. And what this is going to do is take the absolute value of code exp, take away, subtract, role, code, experience. So I'm going to create a variable in memory, and I'm going to print with the replacement fields. Sorry, you need replacement field, years, more experience to get a coding role here. I'm going to use the format operator at the end to pass in this code def variable that we've created here. Okay, that's going to handle that print, and then I'm going to use the elif, pass some parameters into that elif. So we're going to want to do something with the elif statement now. Role code experience is less than equal to code experience. Print, wow, you know how to code. Again, corny as hell. So if I do that and run that line, that's going to evaluate to true because we know that the role code experience is less than my code experience, and it's not equal to that. If I then change that to 6, it still evaluate true because actually my experience matches with the role code experience. So now if I want to change it the other way around and say that I've only got 2 years coding experience, 1 year coding experience, and I hit F9 on that. There we go. So my coding experience is well more than the coding experience that's needed. Okay, so we're now going to perhaps just amp this up, and I'll probably just copy a previous example that I've done for time. So I'm going to throw in this else statement. I'll take you through this. So I've got this code experience and role code experience. These are the same, so I've created the code deficit, and I passed it to the replacement field. And then I'm, again, putting that same Elif statement in there. All I'm adding to this function is, if it doesn't evaluate, and it will always evaluate, it'll always be between those values. But if for some reason they passed in something like an incorrect data type, etc., it won't know how to evaluate this. So it's always good to put an else statement on the back of it, just so it will print something or do something at the end of your code block. It could even just be like breaking out of the function or terminating the specific program that you're working on or closing a database connection, whatever you're trying to achieve with that. Okay, so that's how you do if else, so else if statements, and then adding in an else at the end for our code experience example. So if I wanted to do this in shorthand, I'm just going to do an if else statement here. So let's do it shorthand. So a bit like list comprehension, you start with the thing that you want to try and do at the start. So I'm just going to print your coding experience rocks. Okay. And here's where I put my condition. So as before, you had the print inside the condition. Here you've got the print before the condition. If code experience is greater than role code experience, it will return true. Else print come back when you have more experience. Obviously, hiring decisions aren't usually made just on these facts, but there we go. So if I wanted to run that now, coding experience rocks because it does, 6 years and they only want 2. You're 4 years more advanced than their required minimum. Okay, so there's a couple of other important concepts that I need to talk to you about today. Those useful concepts are the and or operators. So exclusive and stuff like that. What am I talking about? So the and keyword. So if you want 2 conditions, so you're checking for 2 conditions returning true, this is when you'd use the and. So I'll give you an example of this, and we'll create a few variables here. We're going to do the code experience example from before, role code experience, so what the role requires, 4 years, what I've got. What job experience I've got, more than that, actually it's 24 years. God, 24 years. And the role only wants 5 years experience in a specific area, say in terms of coding. So there we go, we're going to set those variables in memory. And then we're going to go if, I'm not going to add a if else in this one, I'm just doing a simple if statement just for clarity. If code experience is greater than role code experience, and these are and, so I'm saying actually I want it to evaluate 2 conditions. We know at the moment that actually code experience is higher than role code experience, so that's going to evaluate this side to true. So let's put another check in there, and if both conditions don't pass, then you'll get a false and it'll print the else part of the condition. So, and job experience is greater than role job experience. So I know this is going to pass because they're both greater than. So job experience is 24 and the role requires 5 years experience. So I know that that's greater than. So it's going to pass both conditions because both return true. If one returned true and the other returned false, then this is where you'd have an else catch to say there is a variance. One of the conditions caused the and statement to fail because both need to be true or both need to be false, but one can't be true. One switch can't be true and the other switch be false. So print. So this is going to pass because we know that they're both true. So your coding experience is what we're looking for. So when I run this, okay, coding experience is what. So the else condition then, how can I make this not work? So if for some reason the job wanted 50 years experience, that's now caused this part of it to fail. So you can see that one of the conditions caused the and statement to fail, because we know that actually my job experience now doesn't return true. This now returns false. So because this is true, but this one's false, this and's going to fail because it's looking for two trues or two falses, not one or the other. Let's change this back so it works. And now you'll get the first statement because both conditions are true. Okay. So let's move on to the or keyword then. How we use the or. So here, I'm going to say if code experience is greater than role code experience, which we know is true, or job experience is greater than role job experience. Tab autocomplete helps as well. Print. You have the right balance of experience and coding skill, something like that. Okay. Else, let's put an else in this time to catch if it doesn't work. Print. The or works because the first condition returned true and only this was evaluated. That's a big long statement. So I'll explain what that means. So what an or statement is going to do, it's going to look to see if this is true or this is true, and it's going to return one or the other. It doesn't return both. It's not exclusive like this one. It's going to return one side and it will return true if that is true. But say both of the conditions failed. So let's make that 40 and that 50. And I'm going to reset these variables in memory. You can see that now all the variables have changed. If I run this again now, this is going to fail because actually both conditions are wrong. Both ors fail. So that fails, so that's false, and that's false in terms of the operator. My role experience and my job experience are now not greater than what's required from the role. So we get this failure. Again, if I change this back, you'll see what happens again. The weirdness of the or statement. It's going to work again because actually it's now said, although this one's false, the right side of the equation is true. So actually job experience is greater than role job experience. So actually, albeit you might not have the coding experience, we're going to give you the job based on your job and role experience because that's greater than that. So in the difference between an and an or is, an and needs both of the things to return either true or false together. So it's evaluating two conditions, whereas the or is just evaluating one or the other, or one or the t'other, as they say around my neck of the woods. Right. Nested ifs then. So why would we want to use a nested if? We want to check for multiple things. And I'm going to do it as a nested hierarchy as well. So you can just see how to construct them. So say I've got coding experience of, 5 years, just as another example. I'm going to say if code experience is greater than 2, let's say greater than equal to, because we've not used that much, then print candidate for junior developer. Okay. Then we're going to say if, because we're doing it inside of this, experience is greater than equal to 5, print candidate for developer. Okay, if code experience is greater than, let's say, 7 years, print senior developer. And then we're going to handle the else, but this is where indentation's key. We're going to put the else at the end, so anything else that's not caught in this statement will then print. This is outside of the evaluation scope or something like that. So it can't actually find, it doesn't know what to do. If, say, it's 0, I'll show you that in a minute. So if I press F9, because this is encapsulated inside, it's going to look to see if the code experience is greater than 2. That's going to return true. It's then going to say, is it greater than or equal to 5? Well, yeah, it is actually greater than or equal to. Because it's equal to 5, that's going to work. So it's looking from 5 onwards. So it's going to print back candidate for developer. And if it had 7 years, so 8 greater than 7, so it would be 8 years experience, I'll get all 3 of these printed out. So sometimes you want to evaluate multiple conditions in this hierarchy. Okay? You want to check for multiple things, so multiple matches. If you're testing in your code and your data to try and create multiple tags, this is the way that you do it. So you can see now for this particular one variable, I've now got 3 values that I can work with. So say I don't know, my coding experience was 1 year. So instead of printing this gobbledygook, I'll just say you don't have enough experience. Okay. So if I prep that, well, it's true because 1 year is not greater than or equal to 2. So it's always going to be you don't have enough experience. If I set this to 0 and you don't have enough experience, if I set it to minus 40, it definitely doesn't know what to do with that. It's still a number, but it's in the negative direction. So that's why the importance of why you'd have an else statement, because it just handles anything else that's not within your conditions. Okay, and there's one last thing to explore, and then we've concluded our kind of little dive into if, else if, and else statements using shorthand in Python, and the importance of the and and or keywords. I use the and a lot, to be honest, when you're doing comparisons between dates. So it normally looks something like this. If my current date is greater than or equal to my start date is greater than or equal to date, and my end date is less than or equal to, not meant to be data, it's meant to be date. So what I'm doing is saying actually return all the subset of the data when you're filtering from the start date that's greater than or equal to the date that I'm putting in. So if I'm inputting a date and the end date is less than, I've done a OR operator there, an OR variable condition to assign. If the start date is greater than or equal to date and the end date is less than or equal to the date, then do something. And we wrap that in an if condition and print and store it in a database or whatever. One last thing to do. So actually, that's a good example. So say I'd not quite finished with this statement, I've not quite worked it out yet. If you're still working on something in Python, you can just use the word pass to make it evaluate. Obviously, this is not going to evaluate because there isn't a date at the moment. So we could just say date equals 2. And we're just going to use a year, 2017. So date will work there. You want to print those. Start date, oh yeah, start date is not defined either. So you need your start date defined working as well. Start date is, let's say 2010. I should say start year really, and end year is equal to 2021. Okay. And if start date is greater than or equal to date and end date is less than or equal to pass. Should work now. There. So although it's not doing anything, it now works. It's now got an equation that it can work with, and I'm not getting any errors when I'm running this script. I'm probably getting a pylint issue around. I've got a undeclared statement here. It's not quite working. Undefined name end. Yeah, it's not working then. It's me being flaky. End date. So you can see that actually that's now worked. I mean, that getting no issues there. So the pass statement is another way to just make your code work while you're working on an equation. It's really handy. Really handy when you're building classes up or class modules from the scratch and you haven't quite figured out all the abstract classes or what you'd need in an object-oriented programming way. Or if you're creating a function, you don't quite know all the parameters, or you've not worked out the logic internally, you create the function initially and then just use pass. As long as the variables are present. As you can see, these are global variables, so they can operate on those. So I'll get into things like functions and function creation and global variables later on. I've just got this problem here that I need to get rid of. And then that's good to go. So I hope you found that really useful. Hang on a second, I'm getting an issue with my screen. It's on F11, that's why. So I hope you smooth. I hope you found that really interesting. Like I say, please watch again for my next tutorial. Please subscribe if you like these tutorials. Drop us a comment. Store the repository on GitHub. Do whatever you want to. But yeah, it's been great taking you through this today. And just drop me some feedback. All right, guys, stay safe.